The training dome on the outer ring of Station Varos 9 wasn't designed with humans in mind. The temperature hovered at a consistent 29 degrees Celsius. The air carried a subtle tang of iron oxide, and the artificial gravity sat at 1.3 Earth norm. Most visitors from Earth requested adjustments within the first 10 minutes. But not Marcus Zeller. He arrived 5 minutes early, wearing a faded gray hoodie, compression pants, and a pair of battered workout shoes. He dropped his duffel bag near the wall and gave the empty dome a nod like he was greeting an old friend. At the observation deck above, Professor Yillith of the Zentari Collective adjusted his ocular lens and recorded the timestamp. Subject Marcus Zeller. Human. Age 36. Commencing warm-up procedure. 3 alien students clustered beside the professor. Each belonged to a different species, each with their own cultural framework for understanding physical exertion. None of them had ever seen a human train outside of simulation footage. The first, a tall, spindly Glavari named Senko, tapped notes into his tablet. Warm up. Initial movement. Subject rotates arms in circular motion. Repetitive. Low efficiency. Marcus began jumping rope, the soft thwip-thwip of the cable echoing in the chamber. His rhythm built slowly, and he began skipping faster, then faster still until the rope was a blur. "Is this the warm-up?" asked Rilza, a short, sturdy member of the Breen species. "He is already perspiring. Humans are inefficient thermoregulators," said Professor Yillith. "Sweating is expected." Marcus tossed the rope aside and dropped into a series of push-ups. He moved without hesitation, chest grazing the floor, breath controlled. After 4 sets of 50, he stood, rolled his shoulders, and began sprint intervals from one side of the dome to the other. "Wait," said Senko. "He is still warming up?" Professor Yillith didn't answer immediately. He watched Marcus finish another sprint and collapse into a stretch, sweat dripping onto the polished floor. "Human biology prioritizes muscle adaptation through repeated trauma," he finally said. "This may be a ritualized form of self-inflicted stress conditioning." "I thought their warm-ups were mild," said Rilza. "He has been exerting himself for over 40 minutes. He has not begun his core training yet," Yillith replied. Marcus stood, took a long drink of water, and muttered to himself, "All right, warm-up done." The alien stared as he pulled a weighted sled from the side wall, loaded it with 2 large metal plates, and began pushing it across the resistance field. Senko dropped his tablet. "Is this not the training?" he asked. "No," said Yillith, adjusting the lens again. "This is the training." Marcus grunted as he pushed the sled across the dome, turned it around, and pushed it back. Each stride dug into the floor, muscles straining under the artificial gravity. After 20 minutes, he paused only to add more weight. Rilza pressed her face against the glass. He increased the resistance. Marcus continued the sled pushes until his arms trembled. Then, without a pause, he moved to weighted squats. Each rep was slow, deliberate, his breath controlled and steady. Hour 3 passed. His hoodie was soaked through. He stripped it off and dropped it to the floor, revealing a long scar along his right shoulder blade. Yillith zoomed in. "That injury is not recent. Why would he train with such intensity if he has previous trauma?" asked Senko. Marcus moved to the pull-up bar. He began a series of complex movements, pull-ups, leg raises, muscle-ups, all without stopping. Rilza looked queasy. "How is this sustainable?" "It shouldn't be," said Yillith quietly. After another half hour, Marcus finally sat down, panting. He pulled a protein bar from his bag, chewed slowly, and stared at the ceiling. Then he stood. He wasn't done. He began shadowboxing, fast and fluid. His feet moved like he was dancing, fists slicing the air in tight arcs. Senko blinked. "He has entered a combat simulation?" "No simulation," said Yillith. "Just muscle memory training." Marcus cycled through combinations. He slipped, ducked, weaved, pivoted, striking at invisible enemies. It wasn't random, there was a rhythm, a narrative to his movements. Suddenly, he stopped. He walked to the center of the dome, lay on his back, and stared at the ceiling. For 10 minutes, he didn't move. Then he stood up, picked up his hoodie, and walked to the exit. The room above was nearly silent. When Marcus entered the observation corridor, he was still damp with sweat, face flushed. He gave the group a casual nod and said, "Sorry if that took a while. Just needed to get my warm-up in." Senko's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Rilza finally asked, "That was a warm-up?" Marcus paused, then laughed. "Yeah. Got a real session later today, but I like to get the blood flowing in the morning." Professor Yilith finally spoke. "Forgive the inquiry, but what is the purpose of this level of exertion before your primary training?" Marcus shrugged. "Honestly? Part habit, part discipline. It clears my head. Helps me focus." Senko's tablet beeped. "Mr. Zeller, your heart rate peaked at 194. That is at the edge of cardiac risk for your age." Marcus grinned. "Yeah, I keep an eye on it. I've been doing this for a while." Yilith studied his face. "You were injured before." Marcus's expression shifted. "Yeah. Shoulder reconstruction after a training accident 2 years ago. Took about 8 months to get back to full strength." Rilza tilted her head. 8 months? That is extensive. "Yeah, well, humans don't grow new parts. We patch up what we can." Senko turned to the professor. "How is it that a species this biologically fragile chooses to engage in such reckless physical rituals?" Marcus dropped onto a bench, breathing easier now. "Because the alternative is softer. We don't get better sitting still." Yilith nodded. "Your species is perplexing." Marcus chuckled. "You're not the first to say that." 2 days later, Marcus was invited to demonstrate his routine for a comparative physiology class. The dome was packed with students, most of them curious, some skeptical. Marcus arrived at the same time, same gear, same duffel bag. This time, a group of Zentari and Breen engineering cadets set up biometric scanners around the dome. As he began stretching, Yilith addressed the crowd. "Observe the subject's behavior. This is not an exhibition of superior strength. It is a study in resilience and conditioning." Marcus started with the rope again, then moved into a different progression. Weighted carries, explosive jumps, lateral lunges. His breathing never spiked out of control, but sweat poured from him within minutes. A Zentari student raised a hand. "Why does he not rest between sets?" Yilith answered, "He is training endurance. Rest is earned through adaptation." Marcus continued for 2 hours before stopping. He walked to the edge of the dome, waved at the students, and said, "All right. That's it for warm-up." One Breen student fainted. Afterward, several approached him for questions. "Do all humans train like this?" asked a purple-skinned Zentari. Marcus wiped his forehead. "No. Some do. A lot don't. I like the challenge." Rilza stepped forward. "You increased your heart rate to dangerous levels. You performed loaded squats under gravity manipulation. You fractured your shoulder once. And you still call this a warm-up?" Marcus nodded. "Yeah, because it's not about proving anything. It's just my way of getting ready for the day." Senko frowned. "What then is your actual training?" Marcus smiled. "That? You'll have to come back this afternoon." Yilith leaned in. "We will." And they did. But that was a different story. 3 days later, Marcus stood barefoot on the black composite floor of Dome C-17, staring down a stack of alloy plates and a short, wheeled cart unlike the one he'd used before. The cart was a new addition, a Breen-designed variable resistance sled with integrated load sensors. It had been wheeled in that morning by 2 technicians who looked at Marcus like he might try to lift the entire dome. Above, the same observation deck was fuller now. Word had spread. Dozens of alien students clustered behind the glass partition, whispering in untranslated murmurs. A few had brought nutrient packs. One Zentari had a stylus poised like he was sketching Marcus mid-breath. Marcus crouched to tighten his shoelaces. Without looking up, he muttered, "You all gonna watch again?" The mic picked him up. A ripple of interest passed through the deck. Rilza, standing beside a new group of Breen cadets, tapped the glass lightly. If it's acceptable, we'd like to see what comes after your warm-up today. Marcus cracked his neck left, then right. Sure. Thought I'd do something light. Maybe some tempo deadlifts and a bit of sandbag conditioning. Got a flight later. A tall, scaled being with dual-jointed arms stepped forward. Flight? You are boarding a vessel after this exertion. Marcus grinned. Yeah, nothing long. Just a shuttle run to the outer loading bay. I'm helping offload medical crates. The deck fell into a short silence. Is that assigned duty? Asked the scaled one. Nope, Marcus said, standing. Volunteered. Thought I'd get a little back work in. He bent, gripped the bar, and pulled. The metal groaned against the resistance clamps. His face tightened, but his posture remained straight. He lowered it, then paused for 3 seconds before lifting again. Above, a Zentari instructor leaned toward the deck's console. His form is deliberate. He's timing his eccentric and concentric phases. A student beside him blinked slowly. But why slow down the movement? Doesn't that make it harder? Marcus completed another rep, sweat already forming along his temples. Exactly, he muttered, not loud enough for them to hear. He moved through 5 repetitions, paused, then added another plate. The scaled alien cocked his head. He is increasing resistance again. That's the 3rd augmentation this week. Rilza crossed her arms. And he has not requested recovery stims. Not once. Down below, Marcus took a sip from a battered water bottle, then pressed a palm to his lower back and rotated gently. His breath was steady, but his eyes had narrowed. A new voice, raspy and low, cut through the observation chatter. Does he not suffer joint friction under this gravity load? Everyone turned. A Kravari elder, visiting from the physiology department, had entered unnoticed. His translucent skin shimmered faintly in the dome light. Human vertebrae are not designed for axial loads over 200 kilograms without support, the elder added. He's wearing no brace, someone whispered. Marcus set up for his next set. The plates clinked. The bar bent slightly. He exhaled, gripped, and lifted. This time the strain showed. A vein along his temple bulged. His knees trembled as he locked out the top position. Then he lowered the bar, slower than before. The Kravari elder murmured. He is inducing microtears along the myofibrils intentionally. Isn't that dangerous? Asked a small Glavari student. Only if recovery is inadequate, came the reply. Marcus finished the set and dropped to one knee, breathing harder now. He rolled his shoulder and rubbed his lower spine. Not an injury, just checking. Above, murmurs turned into low discussion. He's self-monitoring, said Rilza, using proprioception instead of external metrics. The Kravari nodded. Primitive, but effective. Marcus stood, walked to the corner, and hoisted a sandbag nearly the size of his torso. He flipped it over one shoulder, then began walking laps across the dome. Each lap was timed. No breaks. No drops. The Kravari elder leaned toward the glass. His gait is compensating. Left glute is under-recovered. Rilza watched Marcus shift the bag to the other shoulder. How can you tell? He's taking shorter strides when it loads the left side. Barely perceptible, but consistent. Suddenly, Marcus dropped the sandbag. Not out of exhaustion. Deliberate. He jogged across the dome, grabbed a resistance band, looped it around a vertical pole, and began a series of controlled pulls, rotating his torso each time. The Glavari student frowned. Is this part of the training? Marcus grunted through the reps. Corrective work, he muttered. The Kravari elder raised a brow ridge. He is addressing asymmetries mid-session. Without instruction. Rilza tilted her head. Is that normal? No, the elder said. It's adaptive. After finishing the set, Marcus returned to the sandbag and began a new sequence overhead throws, followed by sprawls. His breathing was louder now, shoulders shining with sweat. 30 minutes passed. No one left the observation deck. Eventually, he sat against the dome wall, heart pounding. He pulled off his shirt, revealing a compression sensor patch along his ribs. He peeled it off, checked the readout, and nodded. Satisfied, he stood one last time and walked to the far end where a thick rope hung from the ceiling. He began climbing. Hand over hand, no legs. At the top, he paused, looked down, and let go. He landed with a thud, rolled through the impact, and came up smiling. "You all still up there?" he called. The Kravari nodded. "We are observing." Marcus laughed. "Good. Just making sure I wasn't hallucinating." He grabbed his water bottle, took a long drink, and leaned against the wall. Rilza finally said, "Why do you do this?" "There are machines, simulations. You could achieve similar effects with far less wear." Marcus looked up at her, face calm. "Machines don't teach you how to feel your limits. They just tell you when you've passed them." The Kravari elder watched him closely. "You court failure." Marcus nodded. "Every session." A silence settled. "Then, what happens when you do fail?" Marcus looked around the dome. "Then I know where to start next time." No one spoke for a while. Eventually, the elder turned and walked away. Rilza stayed, watching Marcus pack his gear. He moved slower now. Not limping, just tired. A good tired. As he zipped his bag, she asked, "How long until you recover?" "Depends," he said. "I'll eat, hydrate, maybe nap. Should be good for another session tomorrow." She blinked once. "You mean another warm-up?" Marcus grinned without looking up. "Nope. That was the training." He slung the bag over one shoulder and walked toward the exit. Just before the door slid open, he glanced back at the observation deck. "Next week's grip work. Bring gloves if you're trying it." Then he was gone. One of the Breen cadets turned to Rilza. "Was that an invitation?" She stared after him. "I think it was a warning." 3 mornings later, Marcus sat cross-legged on the thermal mat in the recovery dome, eyes closed, arms resting on his knees. The lights were dimmed to simulate early dawn, though Station Varos 9 never experienced actual sunrise. Around him, a dozen alien physiology students stood in a half-circle, awkwardly silent, whispering only when they thought he couldn't hear. Is he asleep? No. His oxygen intake is too controlled. Why is he vibrating? He's not. That's his diaphragm. It's a breathing pattern. Marcus opened one eye. "You guys know I can hear all of this, right?" 3 of them flinched. One dropped a stylus. "Sorry," Rilza said, stepping forward. "We weren't briefed on your pre-session protocol." "I don't have a protocol. I just like to sit a minute before loading my spine with heavy objects." She raised a hand, hesitated, then asked, "What's the purpose of sitting still before exertion?" "To remind myself I can. Most of the day I'm moving. This part's for balance." From behind her, the Glavari student who'd previously dropped his tablet was clutching a new one, recording Marcus's seated posture from multiple angles. Marcus glanced over. "You expecting something to pop out of me?" "No," the student said. "But your thoracic curve is inconsistent with the last scan." Marcus snorted. "I slept funny." "Happens." The Kravari elder entered without announcement. His translucent skin catching the ambient glow in a way that made him look like a walking crystal. He carried a narrow case, opened it, and withdrew a thin scanning rod. "We will conduct a musculoskeletal integrity check before you proceed." Marcus stood, arms out. "Be my guest." The elder ran the scanner along Marcus's back, pausing at the lower lumbar region. "You have mild compression at L4, L5. "Yeah," Marcus said. "Felt that getting out of bed." "You did not request decompression therapy." "Didn't need it." "Did some floor work." "Took a walk." "Loosened up." The elder looked at him for a long moment. "Most species would require traction or pharmacological aid. Most species don't sleep on a cot with a metal bar down the middle." There was a pause. "Is that a joke?" asked the Glavari. "Yes," Rilza said. "Though I'm not sure if it's meant to be." Marcus rotated his torso, arms sweeping across his body. "All right, let's get started." Instead of heading toward the dome, he turned and walked toward the hydro bay. Rilza followed. You're not using the training floor today? Nope. Pool day. The moment they entered the hydro bay, warm mist wrapped around them. The pool stretched 30 meters with adjustable depth zones and turbulence controls. It was originally designed for aquatic species recreational use. No one had expected a human to claim it for physical training. Marcus stripped down to compression shorts and slipped into the water without hesitation. Set the current to level 3, he called. A technician tapped the console. The water began to churn, creating a soft current along the lane. What is the objective today? Asked the Kravari. Shoulder mobility and cardiovascular control. He began swimming against the current with smooth, deliberate strokes. His body stayed level, legs barely breaking the surface, arms cutting through the water like a metronome. After 10 minutes, he switched to a side stroke, then backstroke, then began a series of underwater laps without surfacing. Rilza leaned forward. He hasn't taken a breath. There must be a rebreather device, the Glavari muttered. Nope, Marcus said, surfacing mid-lap. Just lungs. The Kravari elder narrowed his gaze. You are operating under elevated carbon dioxide tolerance. Yeah, trained for it back on Earth. Helps with stress regulation. Also useful when you drop something under a boat. He dove again, this time dragging a weighted disc with him. He traversed the bottom of the pool, touching each end wall before surfacing. Rilza turned to the elder. Is this recovery or exertion? Both, the elder replied. He is inducing low-impact resistance through water drag while managing breath under strain. It is an adaptive stressor. Marcus climbed out after 25 minutes and stood dripping on the mat. Next part's fun. A tall, cylindrical device was wheeled in an anti-grav harness usually used for spinal rehab. Marcus clipped it around his waist, adjusted the straps, and nodded to the technician. The device lifted him 3 inches off the floor. He began a series of isometric holds, knees bent, arms extended, core braced. His whole body trembled, not from pain, but from the sustained tension. The Glavari student whispered, he's using the harness for resistance training? Rilza frowned. That's not listed in its intended applications. Marcus held the pose for 60 seconds, dropped, rested, and repeated. After 3 rounds, he unhooked the harness and rolled out his shoulders. You build strength by finding new ways to resist gravity, he said. This one just makes gravity more creative. The Kravari elder approached, holding up the scanner again. Your heart rate has remained within stable range despite the strain. Marcus nodded. Been working on that. Then he slumped to the floor, flat on his back, arms splayed. Is this part of the session? Asked Rilza. Marcus pointed a finger upward, eyes still closed. This is called lying down. It's a sacred human tradition. Happens after you swim with a rock and impersonate a hovercraft. The Glavari looked puzzled. I don't understand the ritualistic phrasing. Rilza chuckled. It's sarcasm. He's making light of his own exertion. Marcus sat up, face flushed but calm. I'm not trying to prove anything. I just like knowing what my body can do when I give it the chance. The Kravari nodded slowly. You do not fear inefficiency. You embrace the discomfort as part of the process. Comfort's overrated, Marcus said. Nobody grows when everything's easy. He stood, stretched his arms overhead, and reached for a towel. The technician handed him a small readout device. Marcus scanned it quickly. Everything's in range? Yes, the technician said. Though your blood pressure dipped transiently during the underwater laps. Expected. I'll rehydrate. Rilza stepped closer. Why do you share this with us? You could train alone. Marcus shrugged. Because you're curious. And because maybe one day one of you finds yourself in a place where nothing makes sense and you remember that progress doesn't always look pretty. The Glavari student scribbled furiously into his notes. The Kravari elder gave a single nod. You have demonstrated resilience through variation, not excess. That is rare. Marcus pulled on his hoodie. You all ever try swimming with a rock? Rilza raised a brow. We do not generally subject ourselves to deliberate submersion while encumbered. You should. Teaches you how to move when everything wants to keep you still. He tossed the towel into a bin, slung his bag over his shoulder, and headed for the exit. Same time next week? Rilza called. Marcus paused at the door. Next week's deload. I'll just be foam rolling and complaining about stairs. The group watched him leave in silence. After a moment, the Glavari finally said, "I believe I understand now." Rilza turned. "Understand what? Why humans persist?" She tilted her head. "Why? They do not merely survive challenge. They invite it.